on the Season 4 Open Series leaderboard. And if we do have time to jump over to our other match, we're certainly going to do that. Players are given the green light, and we are underway here in the semifinals. Bargo going to sacrifice a Scalding Tarn. We'll see what land he wants to search up. It'll be a tropical island. And being on the play, very potent here for the Cubs fan. I don't even have a Cubs joke. Just had to see about the playoffs. I have nothing. Cubs fan.
It's nothing to say.
Yeah. Delaware Secrets is where Bargo's going to start. Pretty important card to start with in the matchup. Tom with a tropical island of his own. He'll play a Glistener Elf. And this semifinals is certainly underway. We'll see if Bargo has a counterspell for this. Maybe a Force Will, Daze, who knows. Looks like he's going to aggressively force this. Leads you to believe he doesn't have a card like Lightning Bolt in his hand then.
And an issue that Tom has in this matchup is he can't really interact with the board, and Craig can. Meaning that Bargo can be very aggressive using counterspells, keeping threats off the table, and just win the game with his own threats, knowing that assuming they resolve, there's not a whole lot Ross can do.
This is your kind of game right here.
Here we go.
This is a wasteland. Take care of Tropical Island, Nimble Mongoose to follow up. The only thing that didn't happen is Delver didn't flip. But Tom is already behind. And this is the kind of game that Team Delver wants to play against everybody.
Yep, just be very mana efficient. Destroy some lands, get some threats on the table.
Misty Rainforest is going to search up a Tropical. Noble Hierarch in Tom's hand at this point. So he does have something to do, and he will cast this. See if this resolves. It looks like it will. We're going to head to Bargo's way. We'll see if his Delver will flip. It will. It's a Daze. Pretty nice reveal here for Craig. 3 cards in the graveyard for the Nimble Mongoose, so a little ways away from becoming a 3/3. Into the red zone comes Bargo. Ross will take 4. He'll fall down to 14. Does Craig have any more lands to play, I suppose, is the question.
Well, he needs to be following up with something here. Now he's just down to Daze in hand. Not the hardest card for Ross to work around. His deck also runs very mana light, and he's got a Noble Hierarch on the table as well. Bargo could really use a cantrip. Sometimes you get these draws with Team Delver where you have some Nimble Mongooses, but not a lot of velocity, and they're not powerful Magic cards.
He'd like a Ponder.
Yeah, just something
brainstorm,
just something to get something going.
Ross looking at a lot of cards right now, but if those Nimble Mongooses do grow up into 3/3s, all of a sudden, this game's over in 2 turns. You mentioned Daze, the last card here in Craig's hand. Ross will have to put back 2 cards with this Brainstorm and then move forward accordingly. One of those cards in hand is Daze. He's also got Pendelhaven over there, a game-winning Pendelhaven, mind you.
And Ross is working with complete information.
Yep.
Only card in Bargo's hand, a Daze. Ross knows about it.
The question is, does Tom Ross have an Infect threat in his hand? Looks like he's got some pump spells over there and Vines. He's got a Crop Rotation, which I suppose does act as an Infect card. It can turn into a Crop Rotation, or excuse me, it can turn into an Inkmoth Nexus. There's Verdant Catacombs.
And I'm interested to see, are we seeing a main phase crop rotation?
I got a feeling we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, the concession stand in
That's
the
going to resolve.
will be closing at 6 p.m.
So there is Inkmoth Nexus.
Once again, concessions will be closing tonight at 6 p.m. That is approximately 15 minutes.
The hand's good.
Looks like it's Vines plus Pendelhaven plus Invigorate. We're looking at a kill next turn.
I think the other card in hand is a Berserk too. So that makes it even easier. He can use Vines as protection.
Yeah, or if Bargo happens to leave Insectile Aberration back to block, he's still fine.
Yep. So he's got it all set up, and he's done a nice job of playing around Daze. Here is Gataxian Probe. So Bargo will take 2, and here's a hand I don't think Craig wants to see. You see the Vines, you see the Pendelhaven, Invigorate, and we'll try to confirm if that card in the middle is Berserk or not. I think it makes a pretty big difference here, actually.
Looks like a foil. He has got one foil Berserk. He's got mismatched Berserks in the deck. So
okay, it's a Berserk, yep.
Very rarely critical of Tom, but
here we are.
Here we are.
Quick update for you. Eric Hawkins very quickly up a game here over Stephen Schlepphurst. Not messing around with Storm Deck here is Eric.
I'm rarely critical, but I'm just going to let that thought trail off into the sunset.
Here come the beatdowns. It'll be an attack here for 5. Don't know if Craig found what he was looking for off that Cataxian Probe cantrip. I can promise you this, Tom's probably going to go for it next turn.
Yeah, he's likely to die next turn.
Yeah.
So, and his hand looks pretty good from where I'm sitting. So,
Brainstorm the draw. Yeah, there's Pendelhaven. See if he wants to slide that Inkmoth Nexus forward, as we've seen him do so many times here with Infect. Yep, there it is. Gonna activate it with Noble Hierarch. A Stifle.
okay. I don't think that actually gets him very far here.
It does
Oh,
change
no,
it
yeah,
down.
because of the days.
Yep.
The days pairs up. Yep.
Joshua Johnson, please come up to the stage.
Wow.
Tyler Scott, Randall Gaffner, and Joshua Johnson to the stage.
Now you might have to consider brainstorming. Wow, that's a big change.
It's not the perfect answer. I'm sure Bargo had other preferences, but that's at least enough to get out of this turn.
Well, what's interesting about this, too, is that that's card 5 in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Scalding Tarn's card 6.
So anything Bargo can cast next turn gets him to threshold.
I guess, well, there are a couple that don't. The creatures don't.
Yes, the creatures don't, and Tropical Island, Volcanic Island do not. And anything he can't cast. So Spell Pierce is another one he can't do any sort of effect. He does have the option here of using Inkmoth Nexus on D, pumping it with one of his pump spells, like Invigorate, and then trying to go for the kill next turn.
Nope, not, yeah, he's got to shift gears now. So he's going to cast a Brainstorm. And we might actually see Bargo daze this.
I like dazing here a lot, I think.
Because if he dazes, Tom, if he pays, dies.
Yes. If there's no land in the top of his cards, he's dead.
Oh, he played Pendelhaven.
He played Pendelhaven, yeah. Then, yeah, dazing here is great. It ensures that your Nimble Mongooses are at threshold next turn.
Yep. See if Craig sees this line of play, though. Because letting a Brainstorm resolve is a little hairy. It's really not an easy play to see.
And I wonder if there were some reflexes here from Tom that might have gotten him. He's in the habit of tapping Noble Hierarch as the first order of business in spots like this, so he doesn't have to play around a removal spell targeting the Noble Hierarch. It's the less stable of the mana sources. But now he's down a potential chump blocker on the way back. This could be a big deal. I see Tom is very consistent with that operation. He's almost always tapping the mana creatures first.
Now Bargo gets to untap and draw. Tropical Island in hand, a card added to the grip. Looks like he might lead with the Tropical and now attack with everything. And again, this is lethal attack because there's a fetch on the battlefield. So now Tom's got to activate the Inkmoth Nexus. And we're going to have to see probably a defensive Invigorate here. Bargo's going to sacrifice this Scalding Tarn. Don't know what Craig's draw was. Oddly enough, Tom could have gotten himself in some trouble there again if Craig top decked a Stifle.
Yeah. Probably need to do that before the draw step.
Yeah.
Though unclear if he can beat Stifle anyway, because Stifle trips him up the next
On
turn
the
when
way
he
back, yeah.
when he moves for an attack. But
So here's a defensive Invigorate. He's blocking the Delver Secrets. Nimble Mongoose are going to come through. And again, it's not clear what that card in Bargo's hand is. It looks like it's just a Volcanic Island. Now, I think, yeah, he's going to lose the Delver Secrets. See what Tom draws. It's just a Forest.
I mean, if he's on Vines plus Berserk with an Exalted trigger,
I think he's still good to go, yeah?
yeah, he still should be fine here.
So he's going to activate. He'll attack. You'll get an Exalted trigger. That'll make it a 2-2. This will make it a 6-6. And then Berserk will make it 12 Infect total. and that'll get the job done. So Tom Ross is going to win game number 1 here over Craig Bargo. In fact, up a game over Teamer Delver.
I wonder if this ever stresses Tom out, winning like this, last card, last mana, had to draw Pendelhaven, opponent had a counterspell in his hand, you know, all that kind of stuff, or is this is just what you're used to when you've been playing this deck for this long?
You know, the games where you win, a lot of games he wins are just kind of blowouts, but the ones that are closer are unbelievably close.
And it's so impressive to watch him navigate because he has to line up things several turns in advance.
Well, to the sideboards we're going to go here. Craig Bargo's got a Pithing Needle, a Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Rough Tumble, Sulfur Elemental, 2 Submerge, a Crozen Grip, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Flusterstorm, Vendilion Click, Sylvan Library, and a Life from the Loam. Not a ton of hate, it appears.
Well, I like some of the cards. None of this is really dedicated hate, but there's enough productive cards that Bargo could bring in some good stuff. Sylvan Library is just great against, in fact, if you're backing up with removal, because paying the life is essentially free. You have Flusterstorms and Pyroblast that can fight Counter Wars and Pump Wars. 2 copies of Submerge is excellent here. He might even go to something like Rough Tumble. It doesn't answer everything that Ross does, but it might answer enough for him to bring it in.
Other side of things here for Tom, you see that one of sideboard we've looked at so many times in Caracas, Flusterstorm, Hydroblast, Necropede, Force of Will, Viridian Corruptor, Surgical Extraction, Nature's Claim, Crozen Grip, Crop Rotation, Pajuka Bog, Wasteland, Spellskite, and then the 2 of in Submerge, which is actually pretty good in the matchup.
I think the 2 copies of Submerge come in. Spellskite's got to be good in any sort of Lightning Bolt matchup. I think the extra copy of Wasteland can come in, and if he thinks the matchup is all about just pushing on each other as fast as you can, then Flusterstorm and Force of Will make a lot of sense.
Well, there are the options there for both players. They'll shuffle up, get ready here for game number 2. Bargo will be on the play. Almost able to pull that one out, but a little bit of damage short. In the meantime, we're going to talk about our Season 3 Invitational Champion this year, because last year it was Tom, as we all do remember, beating Reed Duke in the finals in New Jersey. But this year in New Jersey, it was Alex Pistecki beating Steve Mann in the finals. That's why he's got this beautiful-looking Germ token that can go along with your Batter Skulls, your Flare Husk, and your Bone Hordes, and a couple of ways to go about getting it.
Yeah, you can sign up for any of our large tournaments, either our 2-day $20,000 Open Series events, any Premier IQ, the 5Ks, either the ones that we have here on Sundays at our Open Series events, or the ones that you can bring to your local store. And if you can't make it out to any of our large events, any order from StarCityGames.com, $5 or greater, will come with a copy of this token.
Congratulations to our Season 3 Invitational Champion, Alex Pistecki. We'll see him at the Players' Championship at the end of the year. He'll be one of 16 competitors playing for $50,000. And Tom Ross could be joining him later this year. Remember Tom having a great run last year at the Players' Championship before being knocked out by Brad and Nelson, if memory serves. But he wants to get back there, and he was playing like this. This feels like old Tom Ross.
Yeah, he's had some memorable matches here this weekend. Great game 1 there. That one was challenging. Had nothing on what he did in the quarterfinals here. And you can tell he's very comfortable playing this deck. This is the consequence of having a lot of repetition. He is moving very fast in complicated spots.
It looks like, by the way, some people chiming in on Twitter, that this Retreat to Coralhelm deck that Stephen Schlepphurst is playing, not a Legacy mainstay just yet, though this could certainly help it do that, but it's starting to see some play in Modern.
Well, that's less surprising to me. Modern's a slower format than Legacy by and large. And none of the Reliquaries already a card that shows up. There's good stuff decks are already kind of the thing. You have the same density of fetch lands and so forth, so I expected it in Modern to show up at least a little bit. I was not anticipating it showing up in Legacy.
That's a very impressive performance here from Schlepphurst, and if we do have time to jump that way, his matchup against Eric Hawkins, we will certainly do that, though he does have an uphill battle against the Storm player, our #1 overall seed, who has been dominating this tournament, has number 10 on the Open Series leaderboard here for Season 4.
But neither one of these matchups is great news for Eric on the other side of the bracket. You're looking at speed and soft counterspells. Yes, we've seen Eric navigate those matchups over the course of the weekend, but they are among the more challenging ones for Storm, and no matter who he's squaring off against in the finals, if he gets there, it's going to be against a very skilled player.
Certainly doesn't hurt that he'll be on the play, though.
Yes.
If he does get there, #1 overall seed. And you know, even though things got a little tenuous in round number 15, where he oddly enough had to play for top 8, and if he lost, he would have been out of top 8 contention. This has really been his tournament. I know we've seen Tom quite a bit on camera and Craig Bargo quite a bit on camera as well, but Eric Hawkins has destroyed this tournament.
Yes, and that's, as you mentioned, a benefit of the stress of the last round having to play it out was he locked up the #1 overall seed with a win. And it would be pretty funny if he got to square off against Tom Ross in the finals, someone who is in competition with him for the Players' Championship, one of those 8 slots, and someone that Eric gifted a win to earlier on in the tournament to allow Tom to get to the top 8.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the untold stories here. Eric was at one point 11-1, and Tom and him got paired, and Eric just said, I concede. You know, I'm basically a lock already at this point. So he helped Tom get in. Maybe he wanted to conceal a little bit of information about the deck list or something like that, but now the deck list Republic at the top, he doesn't even get the access to do that. Fortunately for Eric, he was able to bounce back and get that #1 overall seed, and that could play the difference in that matchup if they do play against each other.
And in these small tournaments, that can happen where you get to the top of the standings at the end of the tournament, but everyone has played against each other. You can get these really weird pair-ups and pair-downs. The last round of the Swiss here was full of that kind of stuff, and Eric probably thought he was a lock. All he had to do was get a draw in the last couple of rounds. He had a loss he could give and gave it to Tom, but it ended up not working out that way. It could have been a very different tournament if Hawkins did not win that last round.
But don't forget what he beat to make top 8.
Yes.
Beat Infect.
Infect, but he did not beat Tom Ross.
That's true.
Playing Infect, it's a little bit different.
7th seed.
We turn our attention back here to Tom Ross against Craig Bargo. Infect versus Teamer Delver. Bargo will be on the play with the Teamer Delver deck. You think about game #1 there for Bargo. Great start. Started off with the Delver Secrets. Didn't flip on turn 1. Flipped on turn 3. But he had a good start. Had a Wasteland. Had a Stifle. Had a Daze. Had a Force of Will. Had a lot of what you looked for.
Just a little short on velocity. Not great selection at the end of the game, and took him a little bit too long to get his Nimble Mongooses up to threshold.
Looks like Bargo's going to take a mulligan here. We'll see if Tom's going to keep, and he will. So Bargo will shuffle up here. While he does shuffle up, we're going to take a look at that Season 4 leaderboard that we've been talking about so much here this weekend, because the race is certainly tightening up. And it's got a lot to do with SCG States last weekend. Joe Lissette winning both of his state championships, Chris Anderson doing the same. Tom didn't have a great state championships weekend, unfortunately for him. His running buddy Todd Anderson was able to win one. But as we take a look here at this leaderboard, with Morowski with 233 Open Series points, Anderson with 223, Nance, Fabiano, Merriam, they're all good to go, it appears, though some things could change here. Lissette with 191, Joe with a top 32 finish this weekend with Miracles, but you take a look at that second page, and that's where things do get interesting, because you got Hawkins at 188, Briscoe with a really bad weekend here, got to stay around that 189 mark, Logan Mize not in attendance, 186, and there is Tom Ross, 181, and he's walking out of here with at least 15.
Right, a win here gets him to 20. If he wins the whole thing, that's 25. You can see the tightness of the race right here. Rudy Briscoe and Caleb Schurrer, 9th and 16th, separated by less than one Open Series event right now.
So it's a tight race. Now, the page after these guys, you'll find Chris Van Meter, Matthew Tickle. Tickle's going to add 10 points to his total. He'll jump himself up to 179, so that's very important for him. But for Hawkins, for Ross, that's where things do get really important. We can see them square off in the finals.
Right, and you can see where the gap really is with Tickle and Hoagland there. Bargo, 24th place, pretty high up on our leaderboard. Even with a win here, does not really catapult himself into the conversation.
Yeah, he's got so much more work to do. Tropical Island off Scalding Tarn is where Craig will begin. He'll play a Nimble Mongoose. We're underway here in game #2 for Ross. He picks up a copy of Brainstorm as his first draw step. Bargo kept 6, Ross on 7. A Tropical Island, a Noble Hierarch. And there will be a Daze on that. One thing to note here, Craig has aggressively used his counter magic in these matchups.
Well, I like using the counterspell on the threat, and you kind of have to daze a mana creature. I'm not saying that's a rule of Legacy, but it's pretty close. Once the mana creature resolves, your daze isn't worth a whole lot.
Nimble Mongoose is going to come across for 1. The follow-up is a Ponder here for Bargo, so he'll take a look at the top 3. You saw Ross daze back on the daze because he wants his Noble Hierarch on the battlefield, so he won that mini counter war.
It's very rare you're supposed to turn down a daze against someone who's tapped out. That's another shorthand rule of Legacy. It won't get you 100% of the way there, but it gets you about 99% of the way there.
He'll keep with the Ponder. We're going to head back Boss's way. Glistener off the draw. Let it move forward now for Ross. One slip up against this sort of deck. There's almost no coming back.
And that's a big difference in the matchup too. Tom does have some margin for error. He can afford some stumbles. maybe even afford a not optimal block here and there. Same thing is not true on the other side of the table.
Interesting play here from Tom where he plays the Glistener Elf before playing a land.
He's trying to induce a daze because he has a second Glistener Elf.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense.
The problem is that's unlikely to work because Bargo knows he's got a land in his hand.
Yeah.
But you know.
Can't mize if you don't try.
Right.
This is Misty Rainforest. That'll get a volcanic island.
Tom with some of that riverboat magic, you know.
Try to hook him.
Try to hook him in.
And remember, a card that Bargo does have in his sideboard is Rough Tumble. Wouldn't be so bad right now.
Would involve losing the goose.
I might be all right with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a cost here, and Bargo has already mulliganed, so Ross kind of with a card to work with.
That's a snap block by Tom. Wants that goose off the battlefield. This is a lightning bolt to take care of the Glistener Elf. Tom will consult the grip, and that Glistener Elf will bite the dust. Anything else here for Craig? Another Ponder. So going to take a look at the top three. Remember, he kept with the last Ponder. You see a Pithing Needle, a Wasteland, and a Volcanic Island. Does he want to lock himself into drawing those cards over the next couple of turns?
I mean, that's a great set of cards if you're playing against Inkmoth Nexus. Otherwise, it's not worth a whole lot.
And so many times when we've seen Tom play Infect, he's really sandbagging Inkmoth Nexus. And if Craig has seen Tom play or played against him playing Infect, you kind of pick up on stuff like that.
Yep. It's a tough one because you definitely want the Wasteland, because even if Tom doesn't have an Inkmoth Nexus, you can do plenty of stuff for the Wasteland. The Pithing Needle represents a real cost. Unless Inkmoth Nexus or I suppose Spellskite shows up, it's not doing a whole lot for him.
Looks like Daze the draw step here. It won't surprise you that Tom has an Inkmoth Nexus in hand now, will it?
No.
There's the Inkmoth Nexus. And he's just going to pass the turn back. So Brainstorm in hand, Berserk in hand as well. There's also a Daze over there.
Active player when you finish your turn.
Bargo going to play his Wasteland. Going to activate his Wasteland. Going after Trop. Makes sense with the Needle.
Yep. I think right now is Tom is trying to figure out if there's some weird way to get Bargo into a counter battle where he can then daze the Tropical back to his hand. I don't think he saw any way to get it done, but
here's a Needle now. That's going to resolve. We'll get confirmation. Likely Inkmoth Nexus. There's Lightning Bolt on Noble Heart too. That's pretty good. Might see a Hardcast Daze here.
sure.
Yeah. Got to keep that Noble Heart alive. He kind of needs the colored mana. He does have another land in his hand. Maybe he just wants to keep that mana advantage. Vines of Vast with the draw, as we do have confirmation that Inkmoth Nexus the name on Pithing Needle. Here's a Brainstorm. Misty, a Blighted Agent, and another Inkmoth.
And Bargo is running out of targeted removal spells. He's played a lot. It wouldn't surprise me if Ross really desired this Blighted Agent and might be able to set up a kill as early as next turn. We know he's got Berserk and Vines.
He's already used 2 copies of Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot left. There's a Fork Bolt, a Dismember, a couple straight removal spells in the sideboard.
There's Blighted Agent. You mentioned the Berserk and the Vines. It could be a kill next turn.
You know, Ross still has to respect the possibility of Submerge. And that's a complicated thing in the post-board
Does he
games.
have to anymore? Craig empty-handed.
No, now it's fine.
Oh, no, now he's moving a little quicker.
I'm surprised by the playing of the land there because
Yeah.
Submerge at least gives Ross some cause for pause. When you're empty-handed against Blighted Agent, you're just at his mercy.
Well, he's moving real quick now as Tom is known to do Berserk, and that is going to do it. Tom Ross going to win this match over Craig Bargo 2-0. Who said his Teamer Delver matchup is bad? Huh? the boss moving on to the finals.
That was Charles Field.
Bargo's draws were fine. they were fine. Fine. Had threats and removal spells and a little bit of cantripping, but Ross has just been here before, as you can tell.